It's time you move out, old woman. She said it so easily. Like she was asking me to pass the salt at dinner. No flicker of guilt in those eyes I once thought were so beautiful. No hesitation in that voice I used to sing lullabies to. Just dismissal. Cold, calculated dismissal. My name is Margaret Hill, and I'm 67 years old. And that was the moment my only daughter threw me out of the home I built with my own hands. If you've ever been pushed aside by someone you loved with every fiber of your being, if you've ever been made to feel invisible in your own life, stay with me until the end. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. It's a story about dignity. About worth. About what happens when you push someone too far. And please, before we begin, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because today's story. God help me, today's story is one that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. That house wasn't just wood and brick and mortar to me. It was breathing proof that love could build something lasting in this world. I can still remember the day Thomas and I broke ground on that property. March 14, 1982. I was 24 years old, pregnant with Claire, my belly round and full of hope. Thomas had just gotten his contractor's license, and we'd saved every penny for 3 years to buy that plot of land on Maple Street. "This is it, Maggie," he'd said, squeezing my hand so tight it almost hurt. "This is where we raise our family. This is where we grow old together." And we built it, you understand? Not hired it out, we built it. Thomas laid every brick in that foundation with his own calloused hands. I painted every wall, even climbing the ladder at 7 months pregnant because I was too stubborn and too proud to wait. We installed the kitchen cabinets together on a Saturday in July, arguing about whether they were level, laughing until we cried. The stairs creaked on the 3rd step from the top, always did, even after Thomas tried fixing it half a dozen times. "Some things don't want to be fixed, Maggie," he'd joke. "They just want to be heard." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. Claire took her first steps in that living room, holding on to the coffee table Thomas had built from reclaimed barn wood. She lost her first tooth at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where Thomas proposed we say grace even though neither of us was particularly religious, because he said we had so much to be grateful for. That house held everything. Birthday parties with homemade cakes that leaned slightly to the left. Christmas mornings with wrapping paper scattered like snow. Quiet Sunday afternoons with Thomas reading the paper while I worked in the garden just outside the kitchen window, checking on him through the glass every few minutes because I loved him so much it physically hurt sometimes. The walls held her laughter, Claire's bright, uninhibited child's laughter that could fill every room. They held her teenage tears when her first boyfriend broke her heart. They held the sound of her graduation party, all her friends spilling out onto the back porch Thomas had expanded just for the occasion. And then, those walls held my grief. Thomas died 5 years ago. Pericardial diseases. Quick, the doctors said, as if that was supposed to be a comfort. As if quick somehow made it easier to wake up and find half of yourself missing. I was 62 years old, and suddenly I was alone in the house we'd built together. Every room echoed. Every corner held a memory that cut like glass. The 3rd step still creaked, but Thomas wasn't there to hear it anymore. That's when Claire suggested she move back in. "Just temporarily, Mom," she'd said, her voice so sweet, so concerned. "Just until you get back on your feet. We'll help you. Michael and I want to be here for you. And it'll be good for the kids to spend time with Grandma." Michael. Her husband. Quiet Michael who worked in finance and wore expensive suits and never quite looked me in the eye. I should have seen it then. I should have heard the warning in that word, temporarily. But I was drowning in grief and my daughter was throwing me a rope. So I said yes. It started so gradually I didn't even notice at first. Like a photograph fading in the sun, you don't see it changing day by day, but one morning you look at it and realize the colors are all wrong. The first month, they were helpful. Considerate. Claire would ask if I needed anything from the store. Michael would take out the trash without being asked. The kids, Emma, 7, and Jake, 5, would run to hug me when they got home from school. But then, little things started to change. Claire began rearranging the kitchen. "Mom, we need to make this more functional," she'd say, moving my dishes to higher cabinets I could barely reach. My favorite coffee mug, the one Thomas gave me on our 10th anniversary with "World's Best Wife" printed on it in his clumsy handwriting, disappeared into a box in the basement. When I asked about it, Claire sighed. "Mom, it was chipped. I was going to throw it away, but I saved it for you if you really want it." Chipped. As if a small chip made it worthless. As if the crack in something beautiful means it should be discarded. The living room furniture got rearranged. "We need more space for the kids to play," Michael said. It was the first full sentence I'd heard him speak to me in weeks. Thomas's handmade coffee table, the one Claire had used to learn to walk, ended up in the garage, collecting dust. My photographs came down from the walls. "We're redecorating, Mom. Making it more modern." Up went abstract prints that meant nothing to anyone. Down came 40 years of memories. I started feeling like a ghost in my own home. They'd have dinner conversations around me as if I wasn't there. They'd make plans for holidays without asking for my input. Claire stopped knocking before entering my bedroom, the master bedroom I'd moved out of so they could have it. "You don't need all that space at your age," she'd said, and I'd agreed because I wanted to be helpful, wanted to be a good mother who didn't cause problems. So I went to the guest room. The small one at the end of the hall that used to be Claire's childhood bedroom. I could still see the small nail holes in the wall where her boy band posters used to hang. And at night, I'd lie in that narrow bed and wonder how I'd ended up here. A guest in the house I built. A visitor in my own life. The breaking point started with small comments. "Mom, you're watching TV too loud again." "Mom, can you keep it down in the morning? Some of us have to work." "Mom, we need you to be more flexible about your doctor's appointments. They interfere with our schedule." Their schedule. In my house. With my walls. My stairs creaked. My kitchen where I'd taught Claire to bake chocolate chip cookies, where she'd stood on a stool to reach the counter, flour on her nose, asking me if she was doing it right. I started feeling smaller. Quieter. I'd tiptoe in my own hallways. I'd skip meals to avoid being in their way. I'd sit in my small room and think about Thomas, about how he'd never let this happen, about how maybe I'd failed at the one thing I thought I'd succeeded at, raising a daughter who knew how to love. The grandchildren stopped hugging me as much. When I'd try to spend time with them, Claire would intervene. "Mom, they have homework." "Mom, they're tired." "Mom, they don't want to hear another story about the old days." The old days. As if my life, our life, everything Thomas and I built, was just ancient history. Irrelevant. Boring. I started to believe them. Started to think maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too old. Too slow. Too much of a burden. That's what happens, you see, when people you love make you feel small enough times. You start to shrink yourself. You start to believe you deserve the shadows they've pushed you into. But I hadn't disappeared yet. Not completely. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was grocery day, and I'd been planning to make pot roast, Claire's favorite when she was growing up. I'd thought maybe if I made her favorite meal, we could sit together like we used to. Maybe talk. Maybe she'd look at me the way she used to when she was small and I was her whole world. Foolish. God, I was so foolish. Claire came into the kitchen that morning with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Determined. Cold. Rehearsed. Michael stood behind her, arms crossed, like a bodyguard. Or a witness. "Mom, sit down," she said. "We need to talk." My heart started pounding. You know that feeling when your body understands something terrible is coming before your mind catches up? That's what happened. My hands went cold. My stomach dropped. I sat. "Michael and I have been talking," Claire began, not quite meeting my eyes. "And we think this living arrangement isn't working anymore." "What do you mean?" My voice sounded so small. "This house," she continued, and I noticed she didn't say your house or even the house. Just this house, as if it was a neutral space. As if it didn't have a history. "It isn't practical anymore. We need more room. The kids are growing. And you." She paused, and I saw her searching for the right words. The kind words that would make what came next hurt less. She didn't find them. "And you need somewhere more suitable for your age." Suitable for my age. Let that sink in. The house I built at 24, when I was young and full of dreams, was no longer suitable for me at 67. "What are you saying, Claire?" I asked, even though I knew. God help me, I already knew. Michael spoke then, his voice flat. Professional. Like he was in a business meeting. "We think you'd be more comfortable in a senior living facility. Or a small apartment. Somewhere, easier for you to maintain." Easier for me to maintain. I wanted to laugh. I'd maintained this entire house for 40 years. I'd fixed leaky faucets and patched drywall and kept the garden thriving. But now, suddenly, it was too much for me? "You want me to leave," I said. Not a question. A statement. Claire had the decency to look uncomfortable. For about 3 seconds. "We think it's best for everyone, Mom. You'll be happier somewhere, simpler." That word. Simpler. As if my life had become too complicated. Too messy. As if I had become too complicated. "This is my home," I said, and I heard my voice shaking. "Your father and I built this house with our own hands. You grew up here, Claire. Every room has." "Mom, don't be dramatic," she interrupted. And there it was. The dismissal. The way you'd talk to a child having a tantrum. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Harder than it needs to be. I was making it hard by being upset that my daughter was throwing me out of my own home. "When?" I whispered. "We were thinking about the end of the month," Michael said. "That gives you 3 weeks to find somewhere." 3 weeks. They'd given me 3 weeks' notice to pack up 40 years of my life and leave. I looked at Claire, really looked at her, and tried to find my daughter in this stranger's face. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who cried on my shoulder when she didn't make the cheerleading squad. The young woman who asked me to help her pick out her wedding dress. She was gone. Or maybe she'd never been who I thought she was. "It's time you move out, old woman," Claire said, and her voice was so casual. So easy. Like she was commenting on the weather. "This isn't your house anymore. Not my house anymore." The woman who built it, who painted its walls while pregnant, who mourned her husband in its rooms, who opened its doors to her daughter when she asked for help, that woman was being told this wasn't her house anymore. Michael shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the silence. "We're not trying to be cruel, Margaret. We're thinking of what's best for everyone." What's best for everyone? Code 4, what's best for us? What's easiest for them? I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but I wouldn't let them see me fall. Wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "I understand," I said quietly. Claire looked relieved. actually relieved. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Mom. I was worried you'd make a scene. A scene. As if my pain, my shock, my heartbreak was just dramatic theatrics. Something embarrassing she had to manage. I walked back to my small room, the guest room in my own house, and I closed the door. And then, only then, did I let myself shake. Did I let the tears come? Did I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened? My daughter had just thrown me away. Like I was trash. Like I was nothing. Like 40 years of sacrifice and love and devotion meant absolutely nothing at all. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat in that small room, Claire's old room, where I used to read her bedtime stories, where I used to check on her at night to make sure she was breathing because I loved her so much it terrified me, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was rage. Pure, burning, righteous rage. How dare she? How dare she? I thought about every sacrifice I'd made. Every time I'd put her first. The job promotion I turned down because it would have meant less time at home when she was in elementary school. The friends I'd lost touch with because motherhood consumed everything. The dreams I'd deferred and then forgotten entirely because raising her was my dream. I thought about Thomas, dying too young, and how I'd survived it because I had to. Because Claire needed me. Because the house needed me. Because giving up wasn't in my vocabulary. And this was my reward? Being called an old woman in my own kitchen? Being given 3 weeks to disappear? But underneath the rage, something else was forming. Something cold and clear and sharp as broken glass. Clarity. I walked to my dresser, the one piece of furniture I'd been allowed to keep when Claire redecorated, and opened the bottom drawer. Underneath old sweaters I never wore anymore, I found the metal box where I kept important documents. Birth certificates. Marriage license. Thomas's death certificate that I still couldn't look at without crying. And there, in a manila folder that hadn't been opened in years, the house deed. I pulled it out with shaking hands and read it by the light of the small bedside lamp. Property deed. 486, Maple Street. Owner, Margaret and Hill. Not Claire. Not Michael. Not the family. Margaret and Hill. My name. Only my name. Because Thomas and I had built this house together, but when he died, it passed entirely to me. He'd insisted on that in his will. Take care of yourself first, Maggie, he'd written in a letter I received after his funeral. The house is yours. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve it. I'd thought he was just being protective. Maybe worried I'd give everything away in my grief. Now I realized he'd known something I didn't. He'd seen something I couldn't see then. He'd known there might come a day when I needed to remember whose house this really was. I sat there holding that deed, and something shifted in my chest. The grief was still there. The pain was still sharp enough to take my breath away. But underneath it, growing stronger with every heartbeat, was something I hadn't felt in months. Power. They'd forgotten who they were dealing with. They'd mistaken my grief for weakness. My kindness for stupidity. My love for surrender. Claire thought I was weak. Thought I was old and tired and too broken to fight back. She'd forgotten that weak people don't build houses from the ground up. That tired people don't survive 40 years of marriage and loss and life. That broken people don't keep going when everything inside them is screaming to give up. She'd forgotten that I was Thomas's wife. That I was the woman who'd climbed on that ladder at 7 months pregnant because I was too stubborn to wait. That I was the woman who'd survived losing the love of my life and kept breathing anyway. She'd forgotten that I was her mother. The woman who'd given her everything. The woman who'd taught her to be strong, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone make her feel small. Oh, the irony. The bitter, sharp irony of it all. I looked at that deed, and I made a decision. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave. But not the way they expected. Not quietly. Not shamefully. Not like some burden being removed. I'd leave on my terms. And I'd make damn sure they remembered it for the rest of their lives. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I got dressed properly. Not in the old, comfortable clothes I'd been hiding in. I put on the navy blue dress Thomas always said made me look powerful, and I did my makeup carefully, my hands steady for the first time in days. Claire was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, scrolling through her phone while her coffee went cold. "Morning, Mom," she said without looking up. "Good morning, Claire," I replied, my voice pleasant. "Normal." She glanced at me then, taking in my appearance with a slightly surprised expression. "You look nice. Going somewhere?" "Just some errands," I said smoothly. "I thought I'd start looking at apartments. Get a head start on things." The relief on her face was so obvious it would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. "That's great, Mom. Really mature of you." Mature. She was proud of me for being mature. For not making a fuss about being evicted from my own home. I poured myself coffee in a mug I'd had to retrieve from the high cabinet she'd moved all my things to, and I smiled. "I thought about what you said. You're probably right. Maybe it is time for a change." "I'm glad you see it that way," she said, already looking back at her phone. "Michael and I will help you move when the time comes. We're not heartless, you know." "Not heartless." That's what she said. As if throwing your mother out of her home could somehow be done with heart. I left the house that morning with my purse and Thomas's old address book, the one with all our contacts from over the years, written in his neat handwriting. My hands were shaking as I drove, but not from fear. From anticipation. First stop, downtown, to the offices of Westfield Realty. Specifically, to see Sandra Morgan. Sandy had been my friend for 35 years. We'd met at a neighborhood barbecue when Claire was just a toddler, and we'd stayed close ever since. After her divorce, she'd gone back to school and gotten her real estate license. Now she runs one of the most successful agencies in town. The receptionist tried to tell me I needed an appointment, but Sandy's face appeared in her office doorway before I could respond. "Maggie? Maggie Hill?" She rushed out, pulling me into a hug that smelled like her signature perfume, something floral and expensive. "Oh my God, I've been meaning to call you, but with everything at the agency, time just got away from me. How are you, honey? Come in, come in." Her office was warm and cluttered with files and photographs of houses she'd sold. She cleared a chair for me and sat down behind her desk, her face full of concern. "You look wonderful," she said, though I could tell she was lying. I knew I looked tired. Worn. "What brings you by? Please don't tell me you're thinking of selling the house. That place is your heart." I took a breath. This was it. The moment I'd been rehearsing in my car. "Actually, Sandy," I said, my voice steady, "that's exactly why I'm here. I need to sell the house." Quickly and quietly. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in as many seconds. Surprise. Confusion. Concern. And then, because she was a good friend and a professional, neutral interest. "Tell me everything," she said simply. So I did. I told her about Claire moving in. About the slow erasure of my presence. About the conversation in the kitchen. About being called an old woman and told to leave. Sandy's face grew harder with every sentence. By the time I finished, her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. "That absolute bitch," she said quietly, and I almost laughed because Sandy never cursed. "I'm sorry, Maggie, but that's your daughter? The same girl you nearly died giving birth to?" The one you put through college working 2 jobs? The same one, I confirmed. And she told you to leave the house you own. The house with your name on the deed. End of the month. She gave me 3 weeks. Sandy leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant. I could see her mind working, calculating. This was the friend I knew, but also the shark of a businesswoman she'd become. Okay, she said finally. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell that house right out from under her privileged, ungrateful feet. And we're going to do it in a way she'll never see coming. I don't want her to know until it's done, I said. No for sale sign. No listings. No warning. Sandy smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been divorced, who'd been underestimated, who knew exactly how to hit back. Private sale, she said. I have buyers, investors, mostly, who are always looking for properties in your neighborhood. Good bones, established area, potential for renovation. I can have offers by the end of the week if you're serious about this. I'm serious, I said, and I'd never meant anything more in my life. It won't sell for as much as it would with a traditional listing, she warned. These buyers know they're getting a deal for the convenience and speed. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the house. About every memory soaked into its walls. About Claire's first steps and Thomas's last breath and 40 years of life lived in those rooms. And then I thought about being called old woman by the daughter I'd loved more than my own life. I don't care about the money, I said. I care about my dignity. Sandy nodded slowly. Then let's get you your dignity back. Those 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I moved through the house like a spy in enemy territory, packing my memories while Claire and Michael remained oblivious. Every morning, I'd wake up early, before anyone else. I'd go through the house room by room, deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. The photographs of Claire growing up, those came with me. I'd paid for them, taken most of them, loved every moment captured in them. She could keep the prints I'd framed for her room, but the originals were mine. Thomas's tools from the garage, those stayed. Not because I didn't want them, but because I couldn't look at them without falling apart. Let Claire figure out what to do with them. Let her hold his hammer and remember, if she was capable of remembering, what her father had built. The coffee table he'd made, that, I took. One night when Claire and Michael were out with the kids, I loaded it into my car. It barely fit, but I made it work. That table was coming with me even if I had to strap it to the roof. My wedding in China. The quilts my mother had made. The jewelry Thomas had given me over the years. Every single photograph of him. The books from our collection, the ones with his notes in the margins, the ones we'd read to each other on quiet Sunday mornings. I packed it all methodically, storing boxes in my car trunk, in the small shed at the back of the property that no one ever went into anymore. Claire was too busy with her life to notice that her mother's presence in the house was slowly evaporating. Sandy called me every few days with updates. I have 3 interested buyers, she said on day 4. All cash offers. I told them you needed a quick close. How quick? I asked. 2 weeks from signing. Can you be out by then? I looked around my small room, at the boxes I'd already packed and hidden. Yes, I said. I can be out. On day 8, Sandy called with news. We have an offer. It's lower than I'd like, but it's solid. Investor from New York. Cash. Wants to renovate and flip it. Closing in 12 days. Take it, I said without hesitation. Maggie, are you sure? I can try to negotiate. Take it, Sandy. Please. There was a pause. Then, softly, okay, honey. I'll draw up the papers. Can you come by tomorrow to sign? I'll be there. Meanwhile, life in the house continued as if I wasn't disappearing before their eyes. Claire complained about work. Michael watched sports in the living room that used to be mine. The kids did homework at the kitchen table where I'd taught Claire to write her name. And I smiled. I nodded. I played the role of the agreeable old woman who was accepting her fate. Claire actually complimented me on how well I was handling things. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said one evening. "For being so mature about this transition." Transition. Such a clean word for such a brutal thing. "Thank you, dear," I replied. "I just want everyone to be happy." The lie tasted bitter, but I swallowed it down. Sandy sent me listings for rental properties. Small cottages, mostly. One-bedroom apartments. I looked at them on my phone late at night, trying to imagine myself in these spaces. Trying to picture a life that didn't include the house Thomas and I had built. And I found one. A small cottage by Lake Meridian, about 40 minutes away. It had a garden box and a porch and windows that looked out over the water. The rent was manageable with my pension and the money from the house sale. It was available immediately. I signed the lease without visiting it in person. I couldn't bear to. If I saw it, it would make this real, and I wasn't ready for reality yet. I was ready for revenge. I was ready for justice. But real? That would come later. 3 days before the house sale closed, I started my final preparations. I wrote a letter. God, that letter. I must have started it 20 times, each version angrier than the last. But in the end, I kept it simple. Short. Because I didn't owe her my pain. I didn't owe her an explanation of what she'd done wrong. She'd figure it out. The letter sat on my dresser, sealed in an envelope with her name on it. Next to it, I placed a copy of the sales contract. Sandy had given me several copies, and I'd kept one just for this purpose. I hired movers. Told them to come the morning of the closing, that I'd be out by noon. They didn't ask questions. Just gave me a quote and a scheduled time. I'd already found homes for the furniture I couldn't take. The bed from my room, donated to a women's shelter. The dresser, given to a neighbor's daughter who was moving into her first apartment. Piece by piece, I was dissolving my presence in that house. Claire noticed nothing. She was too busy planning how she'd use the extra space once I was gone. I overheard her on the phone with a designer, talking about knocking down walls and updating the kitchen. The kitchen where I'd taught her to cook. Where we'd made Christmas cookies every year. Where Thomas proposed to me on a random Tuesday because he said he couldn't wait another day to marry me. She wanted to tear it all down. Remake it. Erase it. Fine. Let her try. But she'd be doing it in someone else's house. The night before the closing, I barely slept. I lay in that small bed, in that small room, and I said goodbye to the house in my mind. Goodbye to the living room where we'd watched Claire open Christmas presents for 25 years. Goodbye to the kitchen where I'd cried when Thomas died, standing at the sink, staring out the window at nothing. Goodbye to the master bedroom I'd given up, where Thomas and I had loved each other for 40 years. Goodbye to the stairs that creaked on the third step from the top. Some things don't want to be fixed, Maggie. They just want to be heard. I heard you, Thomas. I heard you. And I hope wherever you are, you're proud of what I'm about to do. The morning of the closing, I woke up at 5 a.m. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching myself go through the motions. I got dressed carefully. The navy dress again. Thomas's favorite. I did my makeup. Put on the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 30th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. When did I get so old? When had the lines around my eyes gotten so deep? When did my hair go from brown with some gray to gray with some brown? But my eyes. My eyes were still mine. Still sharp. Still alive. Claire and Michael were still sleeping when I went downstairs for the last time. The kids' backpacks were lined up by the door, ready for school. The coffee maker was set on a timer. Everything in its place. I walked through every room one final time. Touching walls. Remembering. Saying goodbye. At 7 a.m., Sandy picked me up. She'd offered to drive me to the closing, and I'd accepted. I didn't trust myself to drive. Not today. Are you ready for this? She asked as I got into her car. No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. The closing took an hour. Lawyers and documents and signatures. The buyer was there, a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He told me he planned to honor the house's good bones in the renovation. I hoped he would. I hoped someone would love it the way Thomas and I had. The check was deposited directly into a new bank account I'd opened. The account Claire didn't know about. The account that was mine and only mine. When we walked out of that lawyer's office, I was no longer a homeowner. I was no longer tied to 486 Maple Street. I was free. And I was terrified. And I was furious. And I was heartbroken. All of it. All at once. The movers had already been to the house by the time Sandy dropped me back at Maple Street. My things were gone. The small room at the end of the hall was empty except for the letter and the contract on the dresser. I took one last walk through the house. Claire and Michael were at work. The kids were at school. I was alone with the ghosts of my memories. I stood in the living room and remembered Claire's first steps. I stood in the kitchen and remembered Thomas's last kiss before he left for work the day he died. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened to that third step creak. I'm sorry, I whispered to the house. I'm so sorry. But I wasn't apologizing for selling it. I was apologizing for letting it become a place of pain instead of love. For letting my daughter make me feel small in the place where I'd once felt so big. I left the letter and the contract on the kitchen table. Right there, where Claire would see it the moment she came home. Then I took my suitcase, the last piece of me left in that house, and I walked out the front door. I locked it carefully. The key went into an envelope for the new owner, left in the mailbox as instructed. Sandy was waiting in her car at the curb. She'd driven me to my new cottage earlier, helped me meet the movers, then brought me back for this final moment. Don't look back, she said softly as I got in. But I did. I looked back at the house one more time. The house Thomas and I had built. The house where I'd raised my daughter. The house where I'd loved and lost and lived. And then Sandy drove away, and it was gone. I was at the cottage, trying to figure out where to put Thomas's coffee table, when my phone started ringing. Claire. 12 missed calls in a row. I didn't answer. Not yet. Then the voicemails started coming through. The first one was confused. Mom? Mom, call me back. There's a sold sign on the house. Did you know about this? What's going on? The second one panicked. Mom, seriously, what the hell? The sign says sold. As in SOLD. Are you pranking me? This isn't funny. Call me back right now. The third one was angry. I found your letter. I found the contract. What have you done? How could you do this? This is insane. You sold the house? Our house? Without telling us? Mom, you need to fix this. Right now. Call the buyer. Call someone. This can't be legal. The fourth one was venomous. You spiteful, bitter old woman. You did this to punish us, didn't you? You sold the house we live in, the house your grandchildren live in, because what? Because we hurt your feelings? You're unbelievable. You're selfish. You're cruel. How dare you? How dare you? I listened to all 12 voicemails. And with each one, I felt the anger in Claire's voice rising. I heard the desperation. The disbelief. The rage. And I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt something. But it wasn't guilt. It wasn't a regret. It was a strange, hollow kind of vindication. Like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and finally, I could exhale. The 13th call came through while I was holding the phone. This time, I answered. Mom? Claire's voice was raw. She'd been crying. Mom, please. Please tell me if this is a mistake. It's not a mistake, Claire, I said quietly. My voice was steady. Calm. That surprised me. You sold the house. She said it like she was trying to make sense of it. Like the words didn't quite fit together in her mind. You sold our house. I sold my house, I corrected her gently. The house with my name on the deed. The house your father and I built. The house I owned. But we live here. Her voice cracked. Where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? The irony. Oh God, the irony of it. The same question I'd asked her. The same panic I'd felt. She was feeling it now. She was living it. I don't know, Claire, I said. Maybe you can find somewhere more suitable. Maybe somewhere simpler. I heard her sharp intake of breath. She recognized her own words being thrown back at her. That's not the same thing, she said, but her voice was weaker now. We have children, Mom. Emma and Jake. Your grandchildren. You're throwing them out too? And that finally cracked something in me. Because she was right about that part, at least. Emma and Jake were innocent. They were 7 and 5 and none of this was their fault. The new owner isn't taking possession for 30 days, I said, my voice softer. The lawyer said you have 30 days to vacate. That's longer than the 3 weeks you gave me. We can't find a place in 30 days. Not for our family. Not in this market. Then I suggest you start looking now instead of calling me 12 times, I replied. The coldness in my voice surprised even me. When did I learn to sound like this? When did I learn to be this hard? When they made me, I realized. When they pushed me far enough. Mom, and now she was crying in earnest. Full, broken sobs. Mom, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how we treated you. Please, you have to undo this. Call the buyer. Tell them you made a mistake. I didn't make a mistake, I said. For the first time in a long time, I didn't make a mistake. I'm your daughter, she screamed. You're supposed to love me. You're supposed to protect me. And something in me snapped. Something that had been bending and bending finally broke clean through. I did love you. My voice rose for the first time. I loved you so much I gave up everything for you. I loved you so much I let you move into my home when you needed help. I loved you so much I made myself small and quiet and invisible so you could be comfortable. And you know what you did with all that love, Claire? You threw it in my face. You called me old woman in my own kitchen. You told me to leave the house I built with your father's hands and mine. I didn't mean. You did mean it. I was shaking now, years of held-back pain pouring out. You meant every word. You wanted me gone. You wanted my space. You wanted my home. Well, congratulations, Claire. You got exactly what you wanted. I'm gone. And now, so is the house. We'll sue you, she said, and her voice had changed again. Hard now. Desperate and cornered. We'll take you to court. We'll prove you were mentally unfit. That you didn't know what you were doing. I actually laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. Go ahead. Try. The lawyer who handled the sale will testify I was completely lucid. Sandy will testify. The buyer will testify. You want to drag your 70-year-old mother through court and prove to everyone what kind of daughter you are? Be my guest. Silence on the other end. Long and painful. Where are you? She finally asked, her voice small. Somewhere suitable for my age, I said. Somewhere simpler. Somewhere you're not. Mom. I hung up. And then, because I knew she'd keep calling, I blocked her number. I sat in my new cottage, surrounded by boxes I hadn't unpacked, and I cried. Not for her. Not anymore. I cried for what we'd been. For the daughter I'd thought I'd raised. For the relationship I'd thought we had. I cried for the little girl who used to climb into my lap and tell me I was the best mommy in the whole world. Where had she gone? When had she disappeared? Or had she ever really existed at all? Word spread fast in a small town. Within a week, everyone knew. Margaret Hill sold her house right out from under her daughter's feet. Margaret Hill threw her own daughter out. Margaret Hill, can you believe it? The story got twisted in the telling, of course. Some versions made me sound vengeful and cruel. Some versions made Claire sound like a victim. But enough people knew the truth. Enough people had seen how I'd been erased from my own life, how I'd shrunk into myself, how I'd stopped showing up to book club and garden society meetings because I was too tired, too invisible, too much of a burden. Sandy made sure certain people knew the real story. Not out of malice, she told me, but because the truth mattered. Because women who'd been pushed aside by their own families deserved to have their stories told right. My phone stayed silent for 3 days after I blocked Claire. Then the text started coming from Michael's phone. Margaret, this is unacceptable. We need to talk like adults. You're being unreasonable. We're family. Think about what this is teaching your grandchildren about forgiveness. I deleted every single one without responding. Because no, I wouldn't be lectured about family by the man who stood silently while my daughter threw me away. I wouldn't be taught about forgiveness by people who never thought they needed to ask for it. A week after the sale, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Grandma? It was Emma's voice. 7 years old and trembling. My heart stopped. Emma? Sweetheart, how did you? I used Daddy's phone, she said quickly. Grandma, why did you leave? Mommy said you sold our house. She said we have to move. I don't want to move. I like my room. Oh God. Oh God, this was what I'd been afraid of. The collateral damage. The innocent casualties. Emma, baby, my voice cracked. It's complicated, sweetheart. Did we do something bad? She asked, and I could hear the tears in her voice. Is that why you left? Jake thinks you don't love us anymore. I was crying now, silent tears streaming down my face. No, Emma. No, sweetheart. You and Jake did nothing wrong. I love you both so much. This isn't about you. Then why? She asked. Such a simple question. Such an impossible answer. Sometimes grown-ups make things very hard, I said carefully. And sometimes other grown-ups have to make hard choices to protect themselves. I don't understand. I know you don't, baby. And I'm sorry for that. I'm so sorry. Can I come visit you? She asked. In your new house? I closed my eyes. Pictured her sweet face. Pictured Jake's too. Pictured Sunday afternoons with them, baking cookies like I used to with Claire, reading stories, being grandma again. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because seeing them meant dealing with Claire. Meant opening a door I'd just closed. Meant letting the pain back in before I'd even begun to heal. Soon, I lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe someday. Soon, sweetheart. I promise. Okay, she said, but she sounded so small. So hurt. Emma, I need you to know something, I said urgently. You and Jake are not the reason I left. You are the best things your mother ever gave me. You are joy and light and everything good. Don't ever think otherwise. Okay? Okay, Grandma. I love you. Tell Jake I love him too. I will. Bye, Grandma. She hung up, and I sat there holding the phone, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and torn out what was left of my heart. This was the price. This was the cost of standing up for myself. Emma and Jake, confused and hurting, thinking their grandmother had abandoned them. But what was the alternative? Stay and shrink smaller and smaller until I disappeared entirely? Let them grow up watching their mother treat me like trash? Let them learn that it's okay to discard people who love you when they become inconvenient? No. No, that wasn't the lesson I wanted to teach them either. So I sat with the pain. Let it wash over me. Let it hurt as much as it needed to hurt. The cottage was small, but it was mine. Really mine. No one else's presence is crowding me out. No one else's rules to follow. No one treated me like I was taking up too much space just by existing. I unpacked slowly. Put Thomas's coffee table in front of the window overlooking the lake. Arranged my photographs on the mantel, Thomas and me on our wedding day, both of us impossibly young. Claire as a baby, as a toddler, as a teenager. I kept those photos up because they were my memories too. She couldn't take those from me. The bedroom was tiny, but the bed faced the window. I could wake up and see water and sky and birds. I could breathe. I set up Thomas's reading chair in the corner. The one from his study in the old house, the one Claire had wanted to throw out because it was ratty. I'd saved it. And now I sat in it every morning with my coffee, wrapped in the quilt my mother had made, and I read. Sandy came by with groceries and wine. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just sat with me on the small porch and drank wine and watched the sunset over the lake. You did the right thing, she said. Then why does it hurt so much? I asked. Because love doesn't stop just because someone breaks it, she said simply. You still love her. That's not going to change overnight. Maybe not ever. I hate that you're right. I know. We sat in silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. Have you heard anything? I finally asked. About them? Sandy hesitated. They found a rental. A townhouse on the south side. Smaller than your place was. Claire's been posting on Facebook about how hard everything is, how unfair life can be. I laughed, bitter and sharp. The irony. The comments section is divided, Sandy continued. Some people feel sorry for her. But a lot of people remember how you used to look. How you stopped showing up places. How you got so quiet. They're putting two and two together. I don't want her destroyed, I said quietly. I just wanted her to understand. Maybe she will. Eventually. Or maybe she won't. Either way, that's not your responsibility anymore. Wasn't it though? She was still my daughter. She was still the little girl I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd stayed up worrying about, the young woman I'd danced with at her wedding. But she was also the woman who'd called me old woman and told me to get out. How did you reconcile those two versions of the same person? I didn't know. I still don't know. Late one night, unable to sleep, I wrote a letter. Not to send. Just to release something. To put words to the tangle of emotions in my chest. Dear Claire. I wonder if you've read the letter I left for you. I wonder if you understood it, or if you just crumpled it up in rage. I want you to know I didn't do this to hurt you. I know you won't believe that. I know you think this was revenge, pure and simple. Cruel and calculated. But here's what I need you to understand, you hurt me first. You hurt me every single day for months. Every dismissal, every time you moved my things without asking, every time you spoke over me, every time you made plans without me, every time you made me feel like I was in the way. You didn't throw me out all at once. You did it slowly. Piece by piece. Until there was almost nothing left of me. The day you told me to leave, you weren't starting something new. You were just finishing what you'd been doing all along. I sold the house because I realized something. I'd given you everything, and you'd taken it all without even noticing. My time. My space. My home. My sense of self. And you wanted more. You always wanted more. So I took something back. Not to hurt you. But to survive. I hope someday you understand that. I hope someday you look at your own children and imagine how it would feel if they treated you the way you treated me. Maybe then you'll understand. I love you. I will always love you. But I don't like you very much right now. And I can't be around you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I hope you find a good home. I hope Emma and Jake adjust. I hope you become the person I always thought you were. But mostly, I hope you learn that people aren't disposable. That love isn't infinite and unconditional when it's treated like trash. That mothers are human beings with feelings and dignity and limits. I've reached mine. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd send it. Maybe someday she'd be ready to hear it. But not today. A month after the sale closed, I woke up and realized something strange. I'd slept through the night. No nightmares about Claire. No anxiety dreams about the house. Just sleep. Real, deep, restful sleep. I got up and made coffee in my small kitchen. Sat in Thomas's chair and watched the sunrise over the lake. The sky was pink and gold, and birds were singing, and the world was still turning. I was still here. Still breathing. Still surviving. I'd started walking every morning. Around the lake, past other cottages, through the small downtown area with its coffee shop and bookstore. People smiled at me. Some asked my name. I was becoming part of a community again, instead of a ghost in my own life. I'd joined a book club at the local library. Started volunteering at the community garden. Little things. Small things. But they were mine. Sandy called to check in. How are you doing, really? She asked. I'm okay, I said. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a lie. Good. You deserve to be okay, Maggie. Have you heard anything about? They moved into the townhouse, Sandy said. It's fine. They're fine. Life goes on. Life goes on. Such a simple truth. Such a hard one. Good, I said. And I meant it. I didn't wish them harm. I just wished them away from me. Emma's school called me, I admitted. They wanted an emergency contact update. Claire had me listed. What did you tell them? I gave them Sandy's number, I said quietly. I couldn't. I just couldn't. I understand. Did she? Did anyone? Could anyone understand what it felt like to be pushed away by your own child? To have to choose between your dignity and your grandchildren? But I'd made my choice. And I was living with it. Living through it. That afternoon, I got a single text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. I'm sorry. Claire. I stared at it for a long time. 3 words that should have meant everything. 3 words that came too late, or maybe not late enough. 3 words that didn't erase months of pain, that didn't undo what had been done. I didn't respond. I didn't block the number either. I just left it there. Unanswered. Hanging in digital space like everything else between us. Maybe someday I'd be ready to reply. Maybe someday we'd sit down and have the hard conversation we needed to have. Maybe someday I'd let Emma and Jake visit and bake cookies with their grandmother again. Maybe. But not today. It's been 3 months now since I sold the house. 3 months since I walked away from the life I knew and started building a new one. People ask me if I regret it. If I lie awake at night wishing I'd handled things differently. If I miss my daughter. The answer is complicated. Do I regret standing up for myself? No. Never. That was the first truly brave thing I'd done in years. Do I wish it hadn't been necessary? Every single day. Do I miss Claire? I miss who I thought she was. I miss who we used to be. I miss the little girl who loved me unconditionally, who thought I hung the moon, who crawled into my lap and said I was magic. But do I miss the woman who called me old woman and told me to leave? No. I don't miss her at all. I've learned some things in these 3 months. Hard things. Painful things. True things. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. That being someone's mother doesn't mean accepting abuse. That family is supposed to be a safe place, and when it stops being safe, you're allowed to leave. I've learned that 67 is not too old to start over. That your life can be broken into pieces and you can still find a way to build something new. That courage looks different than I thought it did. Sometimes it's not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just signing papers and walking away. I've learned that people will judge you no matter what you do. Some will say I was too harsh. Too cruel. That I should have been more forgiving, more patient, more understanding. That Claire deserved more chances. But I've also learned that those people don't get to tell me what my dignity is worth. They don't get to decide how much I have to endure before I'm allowed to save myself. I wake up in my small cottage every morning, and I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not shrinking myself to fit into corners of someone else's life. I'm not apologizing for existing. I'm just here. Fully here. Maybe for the first time in years. Is it lonely sometimes? Yes. God, yes. There are mornings when I wake up and reach for my phone, wanting to call Claire and tell her about a dream I had or a bird I saw. And then I remember. And the loneliness hits me all over again. But there's something else too. Something I didn't expect. Peace. Real, genuine peace. The kind that settles in your bones and lets you breathe deep. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if Claire and I will ever repair what's broken between us. I don't know if I'll see my grandchildren grow up, if I'll be invited to school plays and birthday parties and graduations. I hope so. I hope someday Emma and Jake understand that I didn't abandon them. That I was trying to teach them something important, that you don't have to accept being treated badly, even by people you love. But if that day never comes, I'll survive. Because I've learned I'm stronger than I thought. More resilient than I believed. Tougher than anyone, including myself, gave me credit for. The house on Maple Street is gone. The life I had there is gone. The daughter I thought I raised turned out to be someone I don't quite recognize. But I'm still here. And that's something. That's everything. Sometimes people ask me, was it worth it? Losing your daughter, your grandchildren, your home, was it worth it? And I tell them this. I didn't lose my daughter. She lost me. There's a difference. I didn't give up on my home. I took back my dignity. There's a difference. I didn't abandon my grandchildren. I showed them what self-respect looks like, even if they're too young to understand it now. There's a difference. The world wants women like me to be endlessly forgiving, endlessly patient, endlessly accommodating. We're supposed to shrink and smile and accept whatever scraps of love our children toss our way. We're supposed to be grateful for those scraps. But I'm 67 years old, and I'm done shrinking. I'm done smiling when I'm in pain. I'm done pretending that being treated badly is somehow noble if I bear it quietly. Because here's what nobody tells you about starting over late in life: it's terrifying. It's lonely. It goes against every instinct. You have to keep the peace, to keep the family together, to sacrifice yourself on the altar of everyone else's comfort. But it's also liberating. It's powerful. It's choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else. And that's not selfish. That's survival. I sit on my porch now, watching the sun set over Lake Meridian, and I think about Thomas. About what he'd say if he could see me now. I think he'd be proud. I think he'd understand. I think he'd pull me close and tell me I did the right thing, the hard thing, the brave thing. Some things don't want to be fixed, Maggie, he used to say. They just want to be heard. I heard myself. Finally. After months of silence, after months of making myself smaller and quieter and less, I finally heard my own voice saying, enough. And I listened. So if you're watching this, if you've stayed with me through this whole story, I want you to know something. If anyone ever makes you feel small, in your own home, in your own family, in your own life, remember this: you're not too old to start again. You're never too late to take back your life. You're never wrong to choose your dignity over someone else's comfort. Because courage doesn't always roar. Courage doesn't always fight back with anger and drama and grand gestures. Sometimes courage just signs the papers. Sometimes courage just packs a suitcase. Sometimes courage just walks away and doesn't look back. And sometimes, on the best days, courage looks like an old woman in a small cottage by a lake, drinking her morning coffee in her late husband's chair, watching the sunrise, and knowing, really knowing, that she's going to be okay. Not because everything worked out the way she wanted. But because she survived. Because she's still here. Because she chose herself when no one else would. That's my story. That's what happened when my daughter tried to throw me away, and I took back my power instead. I don't know how it ends yet. Maybe there's reconciliation ahead. Maybe there's more heartbreak. Maybe there's forgiveness on both sides, or maybe there's just acceptance that some things can't be fixed, only survived. But I know this: I'm not that invisible woman anymore. I'm not that ghost in my own life. I'm not that burden taking up space. I'm Margaret Hill. I'm 67 years old. I built a house with my bare hands once, and I'm building a life with them now. And I'm still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. Still worth something. If this story touched you in any way, if it made you think about your own worth, your own boundaries, your own courage, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? Because you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, whatever choice you're facing, whatever pain you're carrying, you're not alone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for witnessing my story. And remember, you're never too old to start over. You're never too broken to rebuild. You're never too tired to choose yourself. This is Margaret Hill, signing off. And if I can start again at 67, you can start again too. Whenever you're ready. Whatever it takes. You're worth it. I promise you're worth it.